Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, the author of The Captivating Public Speaker, Peter George.
When you speak, do you quickly engage and connect with the audience? Do the audience members remember you? And more importantly, do they remember your message and how it benefits them? In this episode, my guest, Chandler Walker, helps you ensure that all of this happens every time you speak in public. Chandler has spoken on stages both big and small in several countries, including the US, Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, and more. With over 10 years of experience in the speaking world, Chandler has a passion for sharing the knowledge he's gained and has learned to embrace failure as an opportunity for growth and the pursuit of mastery. Here's my conversation with Chandler Walker. Chandler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here and share some info on how to speak like a ninja.
Chandler, you're here to share with my listeners a 3-step strategy that'll help them speak more confidently from the stage. What are those 3 steps?
Yeah, good question. So the 3 steps that I typically follow in order to speak from the stage with authority, with poise, and to get people emotionally bought into what you're speaking about is, number 1, we want to become a challenging leader. So we want to lead your audience and challenge their paradigms, their thoughts, their beliefs, and keep them on the edge of their seats. So as they listen to you, they want to learn more and they need to learn more. The next thing we need to learn is mastering what I call paradoxical thought patterns. And these are really what the thoughts and beliefs that people tell themselves that tell them they can't be successful, that tell them they're not going to be able to do what they need to be doing, that tell them they're not good enough. Once you can beat that and push past that, you now put your audience on a whole different keel. And then the last thing we need to do is install what I call the captivation engine. And that's taking your tonality and your story and using the ups and the downs and really keeping them on the edge of their seats simply by the way you're speaking.
Now, that first one about challenging them, do you think a lot of speakers go out there and actually don't want to challenge them, want to make them feel comfortable?
Absolutely.
Maybe a follow-up to that is, when they feel comfortable, are they not getting as much as they might be able to get out of a presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of speakers get on stage and they want to make people happy. They're nervous, so they come out there and they don't really want to challenge because they don't want to upset people. They don't want to get people basically to leave. They think they're going to walk out. But in reality, what happens is if you don't challenge people, they are going to walk out mentally because you're going to be talking and they're going to be chasing butterflies up in the ceiling because they're not paying attention. They don't care, especially if you end up being the speaker who has to speak after lunch when everybody's asleep. So you have to make sure that when you're up there on stage, you challenge them in a way that they haven't been challenged before. And that puts you in a different place. It removes you from the commoditization market of speakers where everybody does the same thing and pushes you into a new market, a new dynamic to where they're actually going to remember you. Because chances are, people who listen to these speakers, they don't remember anything they say, but they'll remember what you say because you challenge the way they think.
Now, that goes along with something I read, and I wish I could remember where I read it, and it was years ago, where a speaker said he doesn't want to have 5s on the review, 1 through 5, and 5 being the best. He doesn't want 5s. He wants people to come out and say, oh my God, he challenged me, he made me feel uncomfortable. And you generally don't get 5s for that. You might get 4s. So when he said, when other speakers come to me and go, I want to get 5s. No, not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to get 5s. I want to get emails afterward. I want the show, whoever's putting the thing together, to get emails about how interesting what I put together was. And I want about half the audience to be like, I don't know what happened. The other half of the audience be so aligned with me that they don't know how to listen to anybody else. They look for my podcast. They look for what I'm doing in the future. And you don't do that by just being pleasant with, maybe not being pleasant, but just by making everybody happy on stage. That's not how we captivate, how we change beliefs, how we change thoughts, and how we challenge people.
Can you go deeper into the paradoxical thought patterns, how they help you engage and change the lives possibly of your listeners?
Yeah, exactly. Good question. So with paradoxical thought patterns, we're basically taking the issues that they have internally and we're calling them out. And we're using that to shift the way they think about it. So typically when someone listens to people speaking or they listen to a podcast or listen to someone on stage, they go home and they don't do anything. So there's one paradoxical thought pattern. You're not going to do anything after this. But here's how you can change. Here's how you can be different. Here's how you can challenge the paradigm and not become a statistic. You can open your notepads right now. You can write these 3 words down. You can circle today's date and say, today's the day you change the rest of your life. So in those kind of moments, you can force them to start thinking about what they're not going to do and move them to start changing what they should be doing. If you're speaking in a health conference or like weight loss, you tell people, look, maybe it's not the diets. How many people, raise your hand, how many people in here have tried to lose weight before? The whole room will raise their hand, of course. And how many of you have been successful? The whole room will not raise their hand, of course. And so we're all serial dieters in here. And why is that? Well, think back to your childhood. Think about that plate that you had to eat, that whole plate. Your parents made you finish that entire plate. Guess what that did? Today, now you have a pattern of overeating. So maybe it's not even the diets. Maybe it's the fact that as a kid, you were trained to overeat, which has set you up for failure as an adult. So in that, I completely changed the paradigm of the way they think about diets, the way they think about eating, the way they think about losing weight, and help them recognize the problems deeper. And so now what do? They look at me and they say, okay, that makes sense. What do I do now? That moment, I've captivated them. I've removed myself from being a commodity and positioned myself into being a thought leader.
So what you're saying to my listeners is don't necessarily speak to inform, but speak to transform.
Exactly.
That makes a huge difference in the way we present, right?
It's a major difference because we're no longer speaking about here's the 3 steps to do this thing. All you have to do is these 3 steps and you'll be successful. It's here's the 3 steps. Here's the old way. And here's what the new way looks like. Here's why it's different. Here's why what you've been doing hasn't been working. And here's how you can actually finally be successful.
When you're speaking to actually challenge people, help them transform their lives, make a change in their lives, I'm sure this doesn't sit well with some of us as listeners. Do you ever get challenged or objections while you're up on stage?
Yeah, and typically what I'll do is I'll tell people like, who thinks this doesn't make sense? Raise your hand if you don't agree with this. And then we'll go back and forth a little bit. And I'm not doing this to be a jerk. I'm doing this to challenge objections live. So, hey, so what doesn't make sense here? Oh, this doesn't. Okay, well, that I can understand that. Usually what I do is I stroke their ego. Hey, that makes sense. I validate their concern, totally understand. And then I reverse it with the question. Okay, well, what do you think about this? And then after we go through that a few times, all of a sudden they've either flipped or they say, hey, you know what? We can agree to disagree. I respect what you're saying. And I'm starting to get it. So I think as a speaker, instead of ignoring that stuff, you call it out. You let the people who want to speak stand up and speak. You go back and forth a little bit with them and you create a really good dynamic because the other people who have objections who won't speak are listening to that and they're building respect based on that. And they're like, wow, this dude's actually doing this live. He's not hiding or pretending about anything. And ultimately, I think that's authenticity as well.
You think for a lot of the people who won't ask the question while hearing the answer to someone else, internalize that and take that information for themselves as well?
Absolutely. Because for every one question, say there's a room of 1,000 people. With one question, there's 150 other people with the same question. They just won't do it. They won't talk about it. But when they hear that, all of a sudden, now it's real. And now they start to believe it. And now they internalize it and it becomes their authentic truth. And so I think it takes one person to stand up and a strong speaker to encourage that in order to get the rest of the room amped up and to move the rest of the room from, I have objections to, wow, this makes sense.
To make a difference in the lives of an audience, you have to know that audience, right?
Absolutely.
How do you go about researching them?
Good question. So what I look at is first, I want to ask the event organizer or whoever I'm speaking with, who is your audience? What do they do? Where can I find them? What kind of books are they reading? Typically, I have a pretty deep understanding if I'm going into it, but I really want to understand from the organizer's perspective, like who are they? What are they doing? Then I go into audience research. I'm looking on Amazon. I'm looking at best-selling books. I get on Reddit and I go into say it's like a mom's conference and I'm a guy speaking at a mom's conference. I'm going into Reddit and I'm going on mom's blogs. I'm showing up to Moms on the Run. I'm doing all kinds of stuff just so I can get in it with the moms and I can really understand and identify not only just the outward superficial way they think, but the inward real things and thoughts and beliefs they have. So I can truly understand and define the objections and the problems that I need to surface during the speech.
Have you heard what noted speakers and readers are saying about Peter's book, The Captivating Public Speaker? An incredible resource full of practical and easy-to-implement advice. Something for everyone, no matter what your current skill level is. Will help you achieve the results you've been striving for. After this episode, please use the link in the show notes to check out The Captivating Public Speaker on Amazon. Now, back to Peter and his guest.
Could you engage and connect and transform an audience without that research if you did just your canned speech?
I think that would be challenging. I think if you're a really good speaker, you probably can just by the way you can carry yourself. But if you don't do that, you're not going to know them at a deep enough level. And if you don't know them at a deep enough level, the audience isn't going to connect because they're just going to think you're some bozo up on stage just talking. You're just a talking head at that point. And so if we want to remove that, we have to step into their minds. And I call this sort of level 5 listening or level 5 speaking. It's speaking from my heart. It's removing my ego from the equation and stepping into the mind and the heart and soul of the person or people that I'm speaking to. So I can speak in a way that no longer talks about me. It talks about them at a deeper level than they even recognize or have ever thought about.
Yeah, I believe passion will only take you so far.
Exactly.
When you're passionate up on stage, it's like, hey, he was passionate. Great. What'd you learn?
I already forgot.
Yeah, right. So what are some of the other keys of making an emotional connection with the audience?
Yeah. So when you come on stage, outside of looking at the paradoxical thought patterns and being a challenging leader, the last piece is really being able to master your tonality and the way you carry yourself on stage. Because someone can have the best talk in the world. They can really focus on transformation. But if they're like this, so today we're going to talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And here's why jelly is unhealthy. You don't want to listen to that. It's boring. So you have to be, hey, so today what we're going to talk about is peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I want you to know why I hate jelly. Jelly is the Antichrist and we shouldn't be eating this. And here's the real reason why I'm going to tell you this today. So even if that makes zero sense, you still want to listen to it. It sounds way more captivating and it really draws you in. So your tonality and the way you carry yourself on stage, the way you carry yourself and the way you speak is really going to put the audience in a place to want to listen to you. You have to captivate them. You have to keep them engaged because if you don't, they're chasing butterflies and they're going to be off in the sunset.
I think you just broke my heart with the PB&J. What other keys do you have? What other advice for getting and keeping an audience's attention? Sometimes it's easy to get the attention, but it's not necessarily easy to keep it.
I think you have to consistently engage with the audience at the same time. So I say something, I'm like, does this make sense? If this makes sense, just stand up and yell and let me know, say that makes sense. And hey, you over there, what's your number one biggest takeaway from this? So they stand up and they're like, oh my God, he just called on me. What do I do now? And they have to blurt something out. I don't know, I wasn't listening. That's okay. Let's start listening now. So I think you have to actually keep the audience engaged. You have to ask them questions. You have to put them in a place to where they feel like Chandler may call on me any second. So I need to be taking notes and paying attention. And not like I'm a teacher or I'm a disciplinarian calling on them, but like having fun. Like, hey, does this make sense? Just drop a makes sense down below if I'm on a live video. If I'm on stage, hey, if this makes sense, just yell makes sense right now. You guys are looking a little restless. Stand up. Let's do some jumping jacks. So you have to do things to get them excited and engaged and really on the forefront of saying, okay, this is fun. This isn't just a talk. He's not just speaking about transformation. I'm actually having a really good time with this guy.
What happens when you lose them? How do you get them back?
Yeah, when they're gone, you can see that dead audience and they're like chasing butterflies, their faces in the ceiling, they're doing bathroom breaks, and all of a sudden half the stages or everyone's gone. So in order to get them back, you have to look at your audience and internally say, shoot, I just lost my audience. And then you stop and you say, hold on, is anybody paying attention? I kind of lost interest too. I was chasing butterflies in the back of my mind. Why don't we just get ourselves back on track? Let's do, and then you can get them doing something. Hey, let's do this. Let's talk about this. Let's move to this. Let's stand up. Let's walk around the room. So you get the audience sort of juiced and refreshed and then get them back paying attention. So that way they're like, okay, I'm back. And then if you lose them again, you're going to get in trouble because eventually they're going to be like, all right, this guy keeps making me do jumping jacks, but then he's boring.
You're saying if you lose them, acknowledge the point that you lost them and you're working to get them back.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't hide it. Like, hey, you guys, you're looking a little lost. I'm lost too. I was chasing butterflies while I was talking. And so that way you acknowledge that it happened. So they're like, all right, he's true. He's right. I was not paying attention. I was chasing butterflies. And then you can move them back to re-engage them. I think calling yourself out is a really powerful tool when speaking. Making jokes about yourself, just having a little more fun is a really powerful way to keep people engaged and help them say, wow, this guy's kind of authentic. I think I can listen to him. I think I like this. I would have a beer with this guy.
What other tools do you have for engagement, but just speaking in general?
Another thing that I like to do is use a lot of memes and just use meme culture in the way I speak. So I just did a talk in Miami about marketing, and it was like Facebook ads, which can be really boring to talk about. Here's your numbers, here's your CTR, here's magic, and then you make money. And so doing that, I engaged and I used memes. So I used this app and put my face on a bunch of different popular memes. And then each meme, I kind of created a story around about the ads and about the audience. And I was able to keep the audience captivated the entire time by using modern culture, using memes and using humor as a process to keep them excited. And then afterward, it was the best talk. Everybody was asking me questions about it. How did I come up with the memes? And so I think it's really important to recognize that if you can include popular culture, memes, TV shows, if Super Mario Brothers came out, you can find a way to put that into your talk. That's huge. It's going to get people instantly engaged and on it. And then kind of having fun with the audience. We had a girl who said she didn't like individually wrapped American cheese slices when I talked about it. And I said, you might be a serial killer. So having fun with them and engaging with them, making them laugh, I think is a really undervalued component to speaking.
How important is humor?
I think humor is the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal. If you can use humor and if you can master humor, they won't even know what you said, but they'll be so engaged with you. They want more. They won't be able to get enough from you. And so I think if you can move yourself from this like cut and dry talk that's super serious to this funny thing where it's engaging, you're having fun, you're using memes, the audience is going to be so engaged with you. They'll listen to anything you say in the future. They'll find your podcast. They'll do whatever they can. They'll follow you on Instagram just because you made them laugh. And really, at the end of the day, when you think about speaking, people will typically forget everything that you talked about. And the average human retains maybe 10% of what they learn, but they will always remember the way you made them feel, and especially through humor.
Yeah, if they can take away how you made them feel and one nugget, that's a good day.
That's a win.
For my audience, what 3 steps do you have for them to take now?
Yeah, step number 1, I think a lot of people get super worried about their speech. They get super worried about screwing up. Step number 1 is just do it. Just get on stage. And the way I do it is I make a little slide deck, usually like 20 slides or however long it needs to be. And then I'll put little bullet points so I remember what to say. And each bullet point, I have a little picture. And each picture, there's a story behind it. So then I build a perfect little storyboard to tell during my talk. And then it's like, hey, slide opens up, bullet point reminds me what to talk about, picture, tell a story, story's humor, boom. And then all of a sudden I have this great speech built around it. Next thing I think you have to look at is if you screw up, that's okay. Call it out, call yourself out. You're like, man, I'm stuttering a lot today. Can you guys smell that? If I was on Zoom, maybe I would even have bad breath and you wouldn't come near me. So stuff like that is fun. Just call out the things that you're doing wrong because it makes you feel okay with it. And then they feel okay with it because you're kind of an imperfect human. And then last piece is always have a point that you're driving to. If you have this thing, then it's just like circular and chasing butterflies and doesn't lead anywhere, nobody's going to want to listen. So your point has to drive a specific reason as to why they should take action that transforms the way they think and moves them into the pattern to where they feel like you've talked about something they've never heard before. This has to be new and dynamic. And this doesn't mean you need to reinvent the wheel. It just means you need to figure out a way to talk about something in a different way that they haven't heard. For example, weight loss diets. You've tried a million diets, not diets. It's that you overate as a kid. Completely new paradigm to think about. So we have to think about, okay, how can I flip this? How can I take this and flip it upside down so these people are like, whoa, hold on. I haven't ever thought about it this way.
Thanks so much for that. That's nice and concise, and I'm sure everybody can wrap their arms around that. Chandler, that's really interesting, really helpful. 3 steps my audience can take, and I really appreciate that. Where can they learn more about you and connect with you?
I used to have like landing pages and stuff I'd send people to, but now I like to send people to my Instagram so they can see my humor. They can see the way I speak, the information I put out. And so if you go to Instagram.com/Chandler_SAF, what I've done is I've prepared the simple 3-step strategy you can use to change thoughts and beliefs, challenge paradigms, and speak to a captivating audience who wants nothing more than you. Just go to my Instagram and DM me the word help, and I'll send that over. Remember, it's Instagram.com/Chandler_SAF.
Thanks so much, Chandler. You brought a lot of energy, a lot of information. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Hopefully everybody listened and your eyes didn't glaze over. And if you were driving, you didn't fall asleep chasing butterflies. And hopefully you got something out of this.
I'm sure they did. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to tune in again for a conversation with another public speaking expert. And remember to use the link in the show notes to go to Amazon and check out Peter's acclaimed book, The Captivating Public Speaker.